Hello and welcome to Animals Matter. I'm Julia Babb, your host, and I'm here today with Kristina Lefever, the president of the Pollinator Project Rogue Valley, a very small nonprofit doing very big things here in the valley. Welcome, Kristina.
Thank you, Julia. I'm really excited to be here, and I want to say thanks so much for our support from Animals Matter on many occasions.
Very good. Say, let's just start off with the basics. What is Pollinator Project Rogue Valley? How did it get started, and how did you get involved?
Well, it's actually a long story, but I'll try to keep it short. It really started with Dolly Warden in talent. She had the vision of making talent the second BCity USA in the country, actually the universe, as she likes to say. And at the same time that she was working on that, she gathered a group of people together, and it ended up that she also started Pollinator Project Rogue Valley at the same time. They were concerned, actually we still are, with the amount of pesticides that were being used in Talent Elementary School. And so they were successful in getting talent to become the second BCity USA in the country, the first in the valley. And a friend of mine heard about that in Ashland. We both live in Ashland, and this was in 2014. So this was right after we had successfully passed the GMO ban for crops, GMO crops. And so we were and still are the only GMO-free seed sanctuary in the state of Oregon, here in Jackson County. And so Karen Pott said to me, well, you know, we should go find out what talent did to become a BCity, and so we did, and I joined Pollinator Project Rogue Valley as a steering committee member, and time has passed, and so now we are a state-registered nonprofit. We're not a 501c3, and we're thankful to have Beyond Toxics as our fiscal sponsor. We are not a 501c3 yet, something maybe in our future. And so what we do is we talk to people about pollinator gardens and the importance of our pollinators and not using pesticides. Trying to do lots of things with lots of just an all-volunteer
Sure,
group.
and I was going to make the point that you're not a professional scientist or an entomologist. You're just a gardener, and you know that's how you came to it, is the concern for your garden and
the concern for the world.
Yeah.
Even back then, I was hearing about the decline of pollinators, and of course it's gotten so much worse. So yes, it's something near and dear to my heart, and I'm happy that I can spend so much time on this.
Excellent. Excellent. So what is that mission for Pollinator Project? And why do you do this work?
Yeah. Our mission is to help people, we're inspiring, hopefully, people to grow pollinator gardens. And so we educate about that. We have classes. We also advocate. I was up in Salem along with a lot of other people to help put in some legislation, we hope.
Last week.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about that. And then we also ask people to take action, like either to do some legislative work, sending in letters, planting gardens. So our mission is educate, advocate, and act. And then why do I do this work? Because I think there's a lot of work out there, a lot of knowledge about honeybees, which are a very important pollinator. They do so much for our agriculture and so much more, but people don't know necessarily about our native bees, and all the other pollinators. Our native pollinators, the native bees, there's pollinating flies, there's moths, there's butterflies. I'm skipping something, the hummingbird. They are such important creatures for our ecosystem. The native bees, they're the ones that are really feeding a lot of they're pollinating a lot of our food crops, as well as feeding our insects, other insects, the wildlife, the birds. And so without these other creatures, then we're just not going to continue to survive as a human population. And I just feel like it's such an important mission to help people understand that and become inspired to plant pollinator gardens.
Definitely. We need to start kind of understanding our impact on other species. And unfortunately, it's a delicate thing.
Yeah.
So, well, why don't you tell us about some of our pollinators?
Oh yeah, that would be great. So I mentioned the honeybee already, and then on top of that, the native bees. One of my favorites is the mason bee. They are small little black creatures. They almost look like flies. And people don't know that so many of our native bees are actually with us for a year. We see them as an adult for about 6 weeks. And then the rest of the time they're actually in an egg or a larva stage throughout the year. So for instance, the mason bee will come out in the spring and she'll lay her eggs, and then she will die, and then the eggs will be there for the rest of the year, and then they will come out in the spring. So just beginning to understand these life cycles and where they live. There's 70% of the native bees in the world are ground nesters. So sometimes when people see bees in the soil coming in and out of the ground, they assume that they're wasps, but they're not necessarily. There's miney bees, there's digger bees that live in the ground. And then, you know, speaking of wasps, I just have had conversations recently with people saying about the yellow jackets, and what they're actually referring to are paper wasps. Paper wasps are often nesting in the eaves in these little, you know, gray papery cells.
Sure.
And those are probably paper wasps and not yellow jackets. And paper wasps are fairly, you know, non-aggressive. I've had a couple of, quote, run-ins, and they didn't sting me, unlike yellow jackets, which I would definitely think that we do need to be careful of.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then moths, and something that maybe people don't know is that light pollution, if you keep your lights on at night, that can affect pollination at night. Yeah, so thinking about our ecosystems around us, our gardens around us as ecosystems can change our aspect on how we look at our gardens. So rather than having neat and tidy gardens that look like a picture, having them a little, quote, messy, leaving a place for the pollinators. Beetles are pollinators as well. Building beetle banks is going to be important for making sure that we continue to have the pollinators around. So,
and I know hummingbirds are pollinators.
They are.
And then somebody was talking about bats being pollinators, but that's, I understand, somewhere else in the country.
Yeah, actually, bats are pollinators, but we don't have pollinating bats here in the state of Oregon. We have in this area, we have about 15 species of bats, but they're all insect eaters, and so they're actually not pollinators. But, you know, down in the Southwest, they are very important for the cactus.
Still being affected if their dinner is disappearing.
Yes, exactly.
So that's kind of critical.
It is. We need those. Yeah. So did I answer your question about who they are? I think I did.
I think so.
Okay, good.
I understand that Pollinator Project collaborates with other organizations in the, not only just locally here in the Valley, but, you know, in the world beyond. Would you tell us about some of those organizations and how you work together?
Yeah, I think the first one to talk about is BCity USA. I already mentioned that as kind of a start for Pollinator Project Rogue Valley. BCity USA is a national organization started in Asheville, North Carolina, and we are wanting to support having BCities created. We are fortunate to have, in addition to Talent and Ashland, you know, I told you we helped get that started. Then we also have Phoenix, and then Medford is also just now becoming a BCity USA. So we're really excited about that. Gold Hill is a BCity. And so after Medford, we have our eyes set on, not sure which one yet, maybe Central Point, not sure. So it would be great. Maybe we'll be a bee county someday.
Great.
Yeah.
But BCity is a national organization.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a national organization. Right now there are, 80 BCity USAs in the country. And we're also home to the first bee campus in the country. SOU is the first bee campus. And so just having such pollinator awareness here is really important. And then in addition to that, I wanted to definitely make sure that I talked a little bit about Southern Oregon Monarch Advocates. They are another local organization, and they're doing some really great things, planting pollinator gardens that include a lot of milkweed, because as I'm sure you've heard,
Yep.
our monarch is in huge declines. They're one of the keystone species in terms of people knowing about the pollinators, and so that major decline is just indicative of what's happening to so many species. And they're doing a great job planting monarch way stations, and so all the pollinators are actually going to be benefiting from that. On a national level, back to a national level, the Xerces Society it has just been an important national organization. They've been around since the 70s, and if you're looking for a great book to read, this is probably the best one.
Yeah, that's a nice series.
Yeah, exactly. It has lots of pictures about all sorts of things, pollinators,
What,
flowers.
do they have 3 or 4 other books look fairly similar?
They have one on farming, they have one on butterflies. And so if you join, then you can get a discount on purchasing these books.
There you go.
So I would definitely recommend that. And then, native plants are just such an important component to all of this. Without our native plants, then our native pollinators aren't really able to continue to survive. And there's a business here in the valley, Klamath Siskiyou Native Seeds, and I'm just so thankful for Susie Savoy because she's doing so much work to educate people about the native plants. She not only has the seeds, she has the plants, she does presentations. So that's another really good resource. And finally, I think everybody's heard of the Master Gardeners. So we have both a very active Jackson County and a Josephine County Master Gardener Association, and they do so many classes about growing pollinator plants, native plants, about pollinators. I was just up in Corvallis, maybe a month or 2 ago. OSU has an amazing Oregon Bee Project, and their mission is to actually identify and label, if you will, identify all the native bees in the state of Oregon.
Which is how many species?
Well, they say 500, but then I've also heard that it could be more like 600 or 700. That's just the native bee species, not honeybees, native bee species in Oregon. And so they're doing a really great job on that. We're doing counts and things like that. So, yeah.
And I know you wanted to shout out to Beyond Toxics.
Oh, yes. And how could I have forgotten Beyond Toxics? Because we work with them pretty closely, especially on the legislative part. We share an office with them, or maybe we're sharing their office is a better way to put it. We're based in Phoenix. I forgot to say that earlier. And so Beyond Toxics has just been such a great organization to work with. And we'll talk about one of the projects that we are partnering with. So yeah.
Great. Excellent. So, and I know that you and Beyond Toxics and maybe some of these other organizations have a couple of big ongoing projects right now. Could you tell us about a few of those?
Sure. Since we're talking about Beyond Toxics, one that I feel really good about is our non-toxic Rogue Valley project. And with Beyond Toxics and PPRV, Pollinator Project Rogue Valley, we're working with citizens, we're working with communities that are wanting to help their city leaders understand the benefits of and how to transition away from using synthetic pesticides and synthetic fertilizers on city property, on their parks especially.
Where the kids and the dogs are.
Exactly, kind of important there. So Beyond Toxics helped a lot to have talent create and publish an IPM, Integrated Pest Management Policy. It's an organic first IPM. So all of the products and practices they use would be non-toxic, if you will. And that IPM was just implemented in December of last year, so they're still working through and beginning that process to become fully non-toxic. And right now, we're also working with the city of Jacksonville. We have some amazing community members there, Lauren Kemple, Moretta Stiles, Hillary McDonald, really doing some great work to work with their city leaders to help them understand. And I'm really excited that, we have a study session coming up. I don't know when this is going to be airing, but
people can watch your website and probably have information on it.
Yeah, so working with Jacksonville, and so hopefully they too will write an organic first IPM. We're also working with the Grants Pass communities and Illinois Valley. So, I feel really good about how we're helping people become educated on other ways to do things. Beyond Toxics has made connections to a number of experts. There was a group down in California, in Irvine, and they call themselves Non-Toxic Neighborhoods. And so they have a lot of experts that have knowledge about how to have beautiful lawns or parks without using the synthetic pesticides. So that's a really important project. It's really part of Non-Toxic Oregon because Beyond Toxics is working, for instance, with Springfield.
Sure.
So it is actually a big thing that we're working on. And that was part of the legislation when I went to Salem.
Talk a little bit about the bills that you were...
Oh, yeah. So this session, Beyond Toxics sponsored, along with some other organizations, sponsored a bill that would make neonicotinoids a restricted use pesticide for consumers. So that would mean that I, for instance, could not go to a store and purchase a product that contains neonicotinoids. Neonicotinoids are a systemic class of pesticides, and so getting those off of the home gardener's ability to purchase would make a big difference in the lives of our pollinators. Being systemic, then the pollen and the nectar actually becomes toxic.
Yeah,
so,
and you're, just to be clear, you're talking about regular, your neighborhood.
Yes.
We're not talking about farmers.
No.
And what is it called again? Restricted use?
Restricted use pesticide.
Okay.
So that means that I wouldn't be able to buy them without a license or being trained on how to use it. And that would be a lot. Because, if you don't know that you were even purchasing a neonicotinoid, because it doesn't say neonicotinoid on the bottle, and you think a little is good but more is better, then, it's just changing our gardenscapes in terms of pollinators. So that's an important, our non-toxic Rogue Valley, and then the legislation that goes along with that is important. We also have our Rogue Buzzway project, and what we're doing there is we're working with Southern Oregon University, actually 2 students, Seth Campbell and Jarrett Taylor, are working to map pollinator habitat throughout the Rogue Valley.
That's
we're
cool.
asking people, it's pretty cool. We're asking people to go to our website and type in information about their pollinator habitat. Actually, we're going to be asking for pictures, and so we have static maps on the website now, kind of boring, but we're going to move at some point to an interactive map.
Oh, that'll be good.
Yeah, and then people can,
So you can zoom in on your neighborhood.
Yeah, but not too close because of privacy, but still. And then have, and you can see, hopefully soon we'll have, thousands. Right now we only have like 100 or so, but sooner or later.
What is the benefit of having a map that shows you where the pollinator gardens or the beehives, like if your neighbor has beehives, what would be the importance of having a map like that?
Well, that's a good question. Why do we care? One reason is so that we can see where they are, because pollinators need a corridor. You don't want to just landlock pollinator population into this one yard and have like a desert of nothing around it. That's going to not be a good thing on a long-term basis. So having a corridor where we can see, but actually it's more important to find out where they're not. Right? So that way, as we see where the pollinator habitats, the pollinator gardens are, then we can also see where they're not, and we can start to focus our energy on educating people in those areas, encouraging them to plant pollinator habitats and gardens, and educate them about pesticides. So it's a way to fill in the gaps in that regard. And I've thought about this. The Buzzway is about more than just making connections for gardens. It's also about connecting neighbors so that, you know, you can become invested in your neighborhood and you can connect neighbor to neighbor as well as garden to garden. I think that's just really part of the whole thing.
Similar mission, similar
Exactly.
goal. Yeah, so we're all helping. Ask us how.
Exactly.
So,
I like that.
great. Well, one last question: how can people get involved? I know that like many nonprofits, you always need volunteers.
Yeah.
What kind of things are involved in that?
Well, you know, we have a website, and our website does have some good information on there. We've talked about the buzzway. We've talked about, you know, pesticides. We have information out there. If you're wanting to plant a garden or learn more about some of the plants, learn about the pollinators, we have a long, extensive resource list. It would be great if people can go there. If we're missing a great resource that should be on there, please let us know. I'm always interested in learning more, getting more information. So check us out on the website. We have a Facebook page that tends to stay more up to date on things, articles.
It's also kind of easier for people to share things on Facebook.
It is. I try to have, we try to have articles on there that are relevant to the Rogue Valley and to our community, both in educational and fun, and just letting people know what we're up to. And then other ways to get involved is, you know, volunteer. We have a wonderful volunteer now. Her name is Hillary. I mentioned her a minute ago, Hillary McDonald, and she's taken over our newsletter and is working on that. So our newsletter comes out about once a month. It's called the Pollinator Times, and we like to just sort of summarize a lot of the big things that have happened over the month. And we are always looking for volunteers to help us with what we're doing, our events. We have events that come up all year long. Some of the main ones that we do every year is the fun Earth Day at Science Works. We like to do the Spring Garden Fair at the Expo, the Salmon Festival in North Mountain Park, and then there's others. And you know, really, we're looking for a couple of more really great board members. So that's actually a good shout out in case. Yeah, that is big. So
yeah, if you have the mad skills to be a board member, I admire you.
Yeah,
you should come and help Pollinator Project.
That's right.
So
yeah, so it seems like there was one other thing I was going to mention to you that we're working on. But I guess that's probably a good bit right there.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's
is huge.
Yeah, and we're all volunteers. I should say that.
Yes. Very good. Well, Kristina, I want to thank you very much for coming on today.
Sure.
And for introducing us to the Pollinator Project, the tiny but mighty Pollinator Project. Unfortunately, that's all the time we've got for today, but folks can find out a lot more information on your website. There's more to talk about. This really, as we had mentioned earlier, this is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more to know, and there's a lot more going on just in our little valley.
Yeah, but we can make big changes just by being here.
Okay. We'd like to thank SOU for their support of the Rogue Valley Television, community television, and a special thank you to the producer, our wonderful producer, Wanda Borland.
Definitely.
And her all-volunteer crew for making it possible to record today's program. Thanks for joining us today on Animals Matter. I'm Julia Babb, your host. See you next time.